Now that we've seen the basics of the promise syntax, we're going to go ahead and explore how we can update documents using MongoDB, and we're going to do so with promises instead of callbacks. So to start, I'm going to close both of the open files from the playground directory, and I'm going to bring my tree view back into view. From here, the only file we need access to is the one we've been using mostly in this section, mongodb.js. Now down below, we do want to switch the terminal directory as well. I'll use cd.dot/task manager to switch over to that folder, and I'll just use clear to clear the terminal output. So we know how to create documents. We can use insert one and insert many. We know how to read documents. We can use find and find one. And for update, we use update one and update many. Let's go ahead and explore them. Down below, I'm going to remove all the code for find. Once again, that's always available inside of the PDF guide for that lecture. And down below, we're going to start to update our documents. To start, let's go ahead and switch up someone's name. So inside of our database, I have a collection of users. And right here, as an example, I have 2 Andrews. I'm going to go ahead and adjust one of those to be something else. So what I'm going to do is target this second Andrew by ID, and I'll update his name to something like Mike. Over in the API docs, we have 2 of the methods we'll be using for collection. If we scroll down near the end for you, we have update one for updating one document and update many for updating multiple. There's also this update method that's been deprecated. It's an old way to update documents, and it's going to be removed in a future version. You should either be using update many or update one, depending on what you're trying to do. Now we'll start with update one to update just that one document. The first object we provide is the filter, so we target the one document we're trying to update. We'll target it by ID, though we could target it by any other field value. Then we have the updates we're trying to apply. Now there's also this optional options object, which we're going to skip like we've been doing so far. And we have our callback as the third argument. Now for this, we're actually not going to use a callback, we're going to use a promise. And down below, I can see under its return value, it returns a promise if no callback is passed in. Let's go ahead and actually use this. First up, I do need to grab the ID of the document I'm trying to update. I'm going to go ahead and right-click this document to click Edit so I can copy the ID value. Then I'll bring that over to my application code. So over here, we're going to go ahead and use update one to update just that one document. Now it still starts off the same way. So db.collection, I'm trying to update a document in that user's collection, and I'm going to go ahead and use the update one method, which we just explored. Now the first object, this is where we provide the search criteria. So in our case, we're going to target the document by its ID, and the ID is going to equal a new object ID, and we're going to go ahead and pass to it as its first and only argument the string value we copied from Robo3T. So in this case, we're creating an object ID using an existing value, and that's how we're going to be able to target our documents accordingly. Now that we're targeting the document correctly, we can go ahead and move on to the second argument for update one. This is the actual updates we want to apply. Now, this is where things get a bit different from what you might expect. We don't just change things right here, like setting name equal to Mike. Instead, we use what are known as update operators to define the behavior we want to perform. We'll pull up the documentation for the update operators in a moment. Let's just start with the most common one, which is $set. This operator allows us to set new values for the fields in our document, and right here, we're going to go ahead and provide it an object value, which is what it expects. From here, we can customize the fields like name or age. In this case, I just want to customize the name of the document, and I'll go ahead and set it to something new that's not Andrew, like Mike. Perfect. Now it's important to note that when we use set and we don't provide a field, it's not going to delete it. In this case, it's only impacting the fields we've explicitly listed out. Nothing's happening to age. Age is going to stay exactly as it is. Now, if we were using the callback pattern, we would go ahead and provide a third argument to update one. This would be the function, and we would get access to either the error or the result. When we're using promises, though, we don't provide that function. Instead, what update1 returns is indeed the promise. So right here, we can create a new variable, update promise as an example, and down below, we can go ahead and use some of the methods available on it. Right here, that would be update promise.then to register a function to run when things go well and the document is updated. And then down below, we can set up a call to catch to register a function for when things fail. Now, for the success case, when the promise is fulfilled, we'll get access to the result. And when the promise is rejected, we'll get access to the error. And for both, we'll just log them to the terminal. Console.log, printing the result up above. Then down below, the same thing. Console.log, printing the error. Excellent. Now, when we run this, we're actually going to see the name field update. Over in Robo3T, if I give things a quick refresh, I can see the name still is Andrew. Down below, I'm going to run the script. Node MongoDB.js to fire things off. Right here, we got a bunch of output, and then over inside of Robo3T, if we give things another refresh, right here I can see the name has been updated to Mike. So the output we're getting is all of the things available on result, and the only field we would ever pull off of there is modified count or possibly matched count. Matched count is always going to be 1 or 0 for our update1 calls, and modified count is going to be 1 or 0, 1 if a document was modified, and 0 if no document was modified. So that's how we can use update1 to update a document. Now, we can also change this syntax. What we don't have to do is create a variable, update promise, and then add those method calls on there. We can actually chain all of this together. So what does that mean? It means this variable can be deleted, and down below, we can add our .then call right onto the end of the closing parenthesis for update1. So it's db.collection.update1.then.catch. And this is a very common pattern we're going to see throughout the class, and that you're going to see as you start to work with asynchronous JavaScript, whether that's on the front end or whether that's inside of Node.js. This is a very common promise pattern. Now let's pull up the complete list of update operators so we can see what we have available to us aside from just set. What I'm going to do is head over to the browser, and what we're looking for is actually not part of the API documentation, but we can crack open a new browser tab to find it. Right here, what I'm going to do is Google MongoDB update operators. This is going to bring us over to the correct article on the reference documentation. Right here, we have the list of update operators. And if we scroll down a bit on this page, it's going to bring us to a nice long list of operators, which start with the $sign. So down below, we have set, which we already used, and we have other nice ones as well. For example, unset to remove a specific field from a document, or rename to rename a field. We also have other ones that aren't quite as common, including things like increment, or INC for short, which allows you to increment a number in a particular document. We could use this as an example to increment the age. So these are some of the various ways we can work with our documents, though in almost all cases, you'll be using set if you're trying to change the field value, which is the most common scenario. The second most common would be to use increment, so let's go ahead and explore that. If we head over to Robo3T, we can see that Mike has an age of 27. Let's go ahead and increment that to 28. From the Visual Studio Code editor, I'm going to remove the set operator, and we are going to use INC instead. Now, we can actually click the INC operator in the documentation to learn how it works. If we click on that, it brings us over to some examples. Here we can see that we provide the field and the amount we want to increment by. So let's get that done. Now, the only field we can actually increment is the age, and we can increment in a positive way by using a positive number, or we can decrement by using a negative number. In this case, let's use 1 to increment the age by 1. I'm going to save MongoDB.js. I'm going to rerun the script from the terminal down below, and if we head over to Robo3T, we should see that age changed. Right here, it was 27. I refresh things, and it's now 28. So those update operators allow us to do a lot of interesting things without needing to do more heavy lifting. If we didn't have access to this operator, we would have to read the document out of the database, figure out what the current age is, increment it, and then use another operation to update the document. So that would be a fetch and an update. With the increment operator, we can do all of this at once, saving resources and getting things done just a bit quicker. Now it's challenge time. It's going to be up to you to use update many, which works very similarly to update one, though instead of updating one, it updates many, as the name suggests. So I'm going to comment out all of the code for our update one call so it doesn't keep incrementing that age, though I'll leave it in place as a reference for the moment. And down below, I'll paste in those challenge comments. So your goal is to use update many to complete all of the tasks. So we have our tasks collection over in Robo3T. I'll give things a quick refresh to make sure we're looking at the latest data. I have 3 tasks. One is complete, the other 2 are not. We want to use the update many operation to update all documents to be complete. So when they're done, I should see completed true for everything. Now we can do that in one call with just update many as opposed to multiple with update one, and that's exactly what you're going to do as your challenge. So step 1, check out the documentation for update many to get comfortable with how it works. Hint, it's going to be pretty familiar to what we just learned about with update one. Then you're going to set up a call with the correct query and your updates using the necessary update operator. And then you're going to use the promise methods to set up the success and error handler functions. And finally, you're going to test your work. You should be able to run the file just a single time, refresh things over in Robo3T, and see completed true for everything. Now, if all of your tasks are already completed, or you mess up and you need to get better sample data, you can just right-click one of your tasks, edit it, and switch the completed value over to false and rerun your script to make sure it's working. All right, take some time to knock that out, test your work, and when you're done, come back and click play. How'd that go? Let's kick things off with step number 1. Check out the documentation for update many. Now, it's not a method we've used before, but it is similar to methods we've used before. And the goal of working through this section and through these challenges is not to talk about every single thing that MongoDB can do, because the course would become 200 hours long and most of it would be terribly boring. The goal here is to give you the stuff that's essential to creating real-world applications and to give you the tools and know-how to explore the other things when you're ready. So down below, we can go over to the update many docs and we can see that the first argument is our filter. The second is our updates. Then we have the options, which we don't need, and we have our callback, which we're not going to provide because we get a promise back if no callback was passed. Let's go ahead and knock this out over here. I'm going to set up the call with the query and the updates. That's db.collection. We are updating the documents in tasks. I'll be using update many, and I'm going to provide those 2 arguments. First up, we are going to find all tasks where completed is equal to false. That's complete. Don't forget the D, otherwise it won't work as expected. Perfect. Then we're going to provide that second object. This is the list of operations we want to perform. Now in our case, we just want to set a field value, so I will use set, and we are going to set completed equal to true. So find docs where completed is false, set it over to a completed value of true. That's step 2. Step 3, use the promise method to set up our handlers. .then right here. Here we will get access to the result. And then down below, we can add a call to catch where we will get access to the error should that promise get rejected. Perfect. Now, if the promise is fulfilled, what are we going to do? We'll just dump that result again. Actually, we can just dump something like the modified count. Now, you didn't need to dump the same thing to the console. If you just printed result, that's perfectly fine. Right here, result dot modified count. Perfect. Next up down below, for the error, we will just print that in its entirety. And now we can go ahead and test things out. So we looked at the docs, we set up the call, we set up the promise handler methods, and now it's time to test the work. Now I'm going to pull up Robo3T one more time and give things a refresh just to make sure the data is what I expected. We have 2 tasks with the completed value of false, and from the terminal down below, we'll run our script. I'm going to run it. I can see that I have 2 documents updated, which does sound right. And if I refresh things over in Robo3T, what do I see? I see that all of my tasks are now completed, which is fantastic. So there we go. Challenge complete. We were able to use this new method to achieve the desired result. Now we can remove the challenge comments, and that's where we're going to stop for this one. In the next video, we're going to move on to the final letter in CRUD. I know how to create, I know how to read and update. It's time to learn how to delete documents when we're done with them or they're no longer needed. We're going to cover that next, so let's jump right in.